Late 1950s. Deep inside a Canadian aircraft factory, a classified, fully funded military project is rolling out onto the tarmac. It's entirely made of metal. It's perfectly round. It is literally a flying saucer.
Measuring exactly 18 feet across, this wasn't some piece of desert conspiracy folklore. The United States military didn't just investigate flying saucers during the Cold War, they actually paid to build one. They genuinely believed their soldiers would soon be riding these things into combat, treating them as a literal flying jeep.
This entire endeavor started in the mind of a brilliant, highly eccentric British engineer named John Frost. He had this wild theory that a disc-shaped aircraft could take off vertically, hover perfectly, and then accelerate to incredible speeds. The pitch to the military was absolutely irresistible. An aircraft that needed zero runway, capable of allowing ordinary infantry to simply leap over the battlefield.
What makes this project so fascinating is the wildly different, incredibly ambitious dreams the military projected onto this single piece of technology. The Army wanted a simple, rugged flying jeep that a regular soldier could zip over rough terrain just a few feet off the ground. But the Air Force, they looked at the exact same blueprint and envisioned a supersonic craft screaming toward the very edge of space at thousands of miles an hour.
Okay, let's dive into this, because the physics on paper were incredibly elegant, which is exactly why the military poured millions into it. A central turbo rotor draws massive amounts of air straight down into the heart of the saucer. That air is then forcefully expelled downward and routed around the outer rim of the disc, creating an incredibly powerful cushion of lift underneath the whole shebang.
And the craziest part, it actually worked. During the initial tests, the machine roared to life, lifted off the tarmac, and hovered beautifully. The team was ecstatic. They had a perfectly stable, metallic flying saucer. But that excitement only lasted right up until the test pilots pushed the throttle to climb higher into the sky.
The trap lay in an aerodynamic principle known as ground effect. It's essentially a cushion of trapped exhaust air beneath a hovering craft. Here's the massive, multi-million-dollar surprise the engineers didn't see coming. The exact same physics that allowed the saucer to hover flawlessly near the concrete became a mathematical trap. The cushion of air keeping it stable vanished the absolute second the craft attempted to climb out of it.
And this brilliantly illustrates the terrifying reality for the test pilots. The moment they left that trapped cushion of air, the saucer became violently, terrifyingly unstable. The test team coined the term hubcapping to describe it. Think about the way a heavy metal hubcap violently teeters, wobbles, and bobs right before it stops spinning on the pavement. That is exactly what this 18-foot jet-powered metal disc was doing in midair, with a human inside.
The crushing reality was that this marvel of Cold War engineering could not be persuaded to rise more than exactly 3 feet off the ground. 3 feet. Any higher, and it would buck and drift so violently that controlled flight was utterly impossible.
So, the crucial point is that those supersonic Air Force dreams cascaded into physical realities very quickly. Not only did the lift cushion vanish upon climbing, creating unsolvable design limits, but its top speed was a disappointing, sluggish crawl. It also completely struggled to carry any meaningful load. It wasn't dashing to the edge of space, it was barely managing to creep along the tarmac. The unglamorous truth of physics grounded the project relentlessly. John Frost secured the funding and built the Avrocar in the late 1950s. But from 1959 to 1960, the testing phase repeatedly revealed the terrifying, unsolvable hubcapping effect. The engineers tweaked, modified, and coaxed the machine, but you can't cheat physics. By 1961, the military officially withdrew all funding entirely. It's easy to look back and laugh, but this wasn't a joke. The Cancellation was a bizarre collision between Cold War anxiety, limitless ambition, and incredibly stubborn reality. As the military realized, their revolutionary flying saucer was, in practical terms, just a very expensive hovercraft that could barely clear a curb. However, the engineering wasn't totally in vain. While the saucer itself was a complete dead end, the intense aerodynamic questions John Frost was wrestling with regarding vertical takeoff weren't foolish. The data gathered from those 3 feet of air actually paved the way for the functional military aircraft we rely on today, heavily influencing the development of Harrier jump jets, modern helicopter gunships, and tilt-rotor aircraft. This leaves the Avrocar with a fractured legacy. On one side, you have the elegant theory, the dream of a supersonic dash to the edge of space, born from Cold War paranoia and endless budgets. On the other side, you had the physical machine itself, Today, one of those two completed Avrocars sits quietly as a museum relic, entirely defeated by the unbending laws of physics.
It stands as a vivid, metallic monument to a time when the boundary between science fiction and military procurement was thrillingly thin. Which leaves you to wonder, what other outlandish Cold War dreams were defeated by 3 stubborn feet of air?